So with small acreage and small woodlots, it's easy to think that there's not a lot that we can do to hold deer. Well, our farm is a series of small woodlots that used to not hold deer, but we've done a ton of work over the last 10 years, and we've been able to completely transform our habitat so that even small woodlots can hold deer. So I'm actually going to do a 4-part series talking about how you can utilize small woodlot settings to hold deer. I'm going to pick 4 different small woodlots on our farm and talk about the habitat improvements we've done and the hunting strategy we've applied to these different woodlots to improve our overall carrying capacity on our farm and hunting success. So stick with me. This should be a fun 4-part video series. This area was a 20-acre area that did not have much wildlife value before I got to work. One of the first things I did was start to add switchgrass. You can see I have about 2 acres total of switchgrass that I planted on the west and southern side. The reason for the switchgrass was to provide security for the potential bedding opportunities that existed in this brushy bottom that you can see on the screen. The deer do use this eastern side of the switchgrass for bedding to some degree, where I left open pockets, which I'm very much okay with because I want to encourage deer bedding in this area. But the main purpose of the switchgrass was to provide that extra level of security for the brushy bottom below. A lot of times when planting switchgrass, I'll plant about a 10-yard wide screen when I'm trying to provide that screening cover. But the way the hill lied in this situation, it was good to plant this larger area switchgrass because it helped screen my access to the west, but on the other side of the hill I could encourage some deer bedding up next to that brushy bottom. In addition to the small strip of switchgrass that I planted on the southern side, I've added in strips of spruce on the southern side to give it 2 levels of screening. When possible, I love to have 2 layers of screening to ensure that I am providing as much security as possible for the area that I'm wanting to screen. And in this circumstance, it is that brushy bottom bedding area. Here's the area that is what I call the brushy bottom. Before I got to work with doing some general timber stand improvement work in this area, it was fairly open and actually pretty worthless habitat. You can see from this overhead shot that I've cut quite a few trees down in this area to open up some nice oaks and also to encourage woody regeneration. As I walk through this area, you can see that I did mostly chop and drop in this area. The trees just did not set up well for hinge cutting. It was mostly big old basswood trees, so I got in and just let them hit the dirt so that I could get more sunlight to the forest floor and also open up and release some oak trees. By opening up the crowns of the oaks in this area, I'm confident that I doubled the amount of acorns that are now dropping into this bedding area, which I absolutely love for early season bow hunting opportunities. To the northeast of the brushy bottom, I have this long, narrow stretch of woods that is basically just a ridge coming up from the river bottom to the east. In this area, I've utilized several different forest stand improvement techniques. As you can see as I'm walking through this spot right now, I do have some hinge cuts mixed into this area. Before we did a whole lot of cutting in this area, the first thing we did was log out some of the larger, more marketable timber. This was a see-through chunk of woods before we busted out the chainsaw in this area, and now you can see that it is loaded with woody regeneration. So the deer have absolutely responded to the work that we've done in this area, and it will hold several deer in the fall. As this gets thicker from the woody regeneration, the big thing that I need to stay on top of in this area is making sure that I have lots of trails for the deer to move around in, and also keep plenty of deer bedding opportunities open. Before, if you were standing at the bottom of this ridge, you could see all the way to the top. But after our chainsaw work, you can see that that is clearly not the case anymore. From the overhead look here, you can see that this is not a big chunk of timber at all. At its deepest point, it might be 100 yards.
across. So before, it really did not hold any deer when it was wide open timber, but now that we've done lots of cutting in this area, we've got habitat in the deer's face, and the deer have absolutely responded. We have realized in the last few years that we need to add conifers into the areas that I'm circling right now. Now, there was some food planted in these areas before, but we're really trying to pinch down that deer movement. So we're going to take about an acre and a quarter out of production and plant some spruce. Speaking of food, one of the best features of this area has been adding in this narrow strip of food between two larger food sources. This strip goes right by a couple of our bow stands. We've tended to do brassicas in this narrow strip. This year we'll do a alfalfa and clover mix because we have done brassicas for a few years in a row, so it's time to give the soil a break. This strip of food goes right up to this stand that we have set in this staging area. You can see it is right adjacent to the Brushy Bottom, and it's also adjacent to the ridge that I've done a lot of forest stand improvement work on. In this stand, we can actually sit and watch down into the Brushy Bottom. We call it Buck Hollow because we've seen several bucks stand up out of their beds down in this hollow. I've actually got to watch a couple of bull bucks that I've shot get up out of their beds from down in this hollow. The food strip is 20 yards from the stand. It acts more as a staging strip. It's definitely not a destination food source, and you can see I got a vine that's set up perfectly 20 yards from the stand to stop any buck that's checking out this area. On the far northern side of the ridge, we have a stand right here that's set up in kind of a narrow pinch between two different wood lots. This also acts as a really nice staging stand, and it's also a great rut stand. As you can see here, I have a travel corridor that comes out of the forest stand improvement area and walks right up to this ladder stand that I have set on the ridge, and we also get some traffic coming up from the side-by-side trail there. But this is a really nice spot during the rut to catch some of that cruising movement between bedding areas. And again, I incentivize them with a vine. You can see the vine right there. Just as if the buck does happen to cut through there, hopefully we can get him to stop and get our 20-yard bow shot. There's the ladder stand right there. I actually have two different travel corridors coming out of this area that was logged to the north that intersect right in front of this bow stand. The third stand in this area is set up right on a pond, right along that green food strip. This is a really nice stand early season. Generally, it's a good spot to shoot our does in because it is quite a ways from the cover. In early season, the deer are really trying to push and get towards that water source, especially if it's really hot early season. I like shooting our does here because if we put a good shot on them, it's 100 yards to cover, so generally you can get them to drop before they hit the cover, and we don't have to worry about stinking up the rest of the farm. And lastly, for this area, we have our two main food sources, as you can see right here. We rotate these every year. So one year, one side will be corn and the other will be beans, and then we switch it every single year. So then the other side is corn, and the side that was corn the year before will be beans. Corn and beans are pretty staple in our food plot program just because I like to help the deer out during those highest stress months, and we know like during that mid to late season, the deer are definitely on beans really heavy. Corn is good late season, but a lot of times we're just planting corn to really help the deer out during the winter months. Outside of just building up the habitat in this area, one of the main things we focused on is just building up that level of security that the deer need to feel to hang out in an area. I've been working very hard to just cut off sight lines and make it so that even as we're trying to access our stands, the deer have no idea that we're accessing them. And when the deer don't know they're being hunted, your chances of success exponentially increase. All right, thanks for watching. You all take care. God bless.